Now, all of you guys are wondering what exactly happens when a third film makes its way into to a particular franchise. Particularly when said franchise has gotten a ton of acclaim by critics, and and is set to be the third film in said trilogy, but might not live up to the standards up to the past two movies. Yeah, sure. The three movies is definitely a trilogy, making a mistake. But sometimes the third film in a trilogy can turn out to be weaker than its previous two films, either because the director who directed the previous film steps out of the film, or one of the characters do a subpar acting job, or the writers just don't give the same rat's ass that they do the first time around. Case in point, the X-Men franchise. The X-Men franchise originally started off as a trilogy back in the early 2000s. If you guys remember me watching X-Men Days of Future Past and reviewing it on my channel a few weeks ago, you probably noticed that. But what you guys don't know that I can tell you specifically is that I actually really love X-Men Days of Future Past, but I'll get to that in a bit. The X-Men franchise first started back around the 2000s with the massive cast behind them, like Halle Berry, Hugh Jackman, Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, and Jim Caviezel. The first film, the first two films, the first film in X-Men 2 X-Men United, were massively successful and hugely popular in starting up the X-Men franchise and establishing the X-Men as comic book films. However, when the third film came around, The Last Stand in 2006, which I didn't get into when I reviewed Days of Future Past, the production I met up to that, and especially making the film, was complete crap. Not only did Bryan Singer, the director for those two films, drop out of the film, but they would have a hard time finding a good director to replace him. They did bring on the popular and talented Matthew Vaughn, but he wanted to start the film over from scratch, and the directors in the studio didn't want to go with that, so they kicked him out. Then on came Brett Ratner, who had a habit of taking films that were kind of rushed in terms of their production schedule and making a cohesive film out of it. The only two people who who against this were the two screenwriters for The Last Stand, Simon Kinberg, the screenwriter and producer of the X-Men series, and especially and co-screenwriter Zach Penn, who had co-written the script. They fought creatively with Marvel had this decision to bring Brett Ratner on, because not only was he directing the film, but he also tampered with their script and made extensive changes that they did not agree with. But however, they couldn't do anything. So when X-Men: The Last Stand came out in 2006, it made bucket loads of money at the box office, but critics and audiences were anything but impressed by what was going on. Not only was all the emotive subtlety, the relatable characters, and especially the development of said characters completely lost, and not only were far too many mutant characters killed off, as well as Professor X himself. To say nothing of the fact of all the action heaviness and use of special effects, which Brett Ratner and Michael Bay will become known for, using heaviness and extend to he basically goes this is where the world got let's down to one rule for Brett Ratner: forget subtlety, let's blow things up. The same thing that Michael Bay would use 1 year later when he would start the Transformers franchise. Soon after this, the X-Men franchise was in a bottomless pit for a long time, and they didn't think it ever have a chance of recovering. Instead of trying to revive it with a new franchise or another movie, Fox instead to try to reboot the series with prequels. They started the first prequel called X-Men First Class back in production on 2010, and they brought on director Matthew Vaughn to direct it. He was out of the first film, but he did come out for this film, even though he didn't have any screenwriting credits. And to be honest, he actually pulled it off. The cast was fantastic, the story was awesome, the action and writing were really good, and it's a great prequel while also featuring a younger, more efficient cast, such as James McAvoy as Professor X, Michael Fassbender as Magneto, January Jones as Emma Frost, and Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique, and so forth. Moving on from that, it really launched the franchise back from the dead during The Last Stand, and fans and audiences were clamoring for another sequel, which would later surface a few years later, and it was surfaced in more ways than one. It was actually both a prequel to the two sequels in one, both a sequel to The Last Stand, and also a sequel to the First Class, which featured both the cast from both films, such as James McAvoy, such as the cast from the old films, and the cast from the new films. And believe it or not, Bryan Singer, who came out to direct that film, he actually worked his magic and pulled it off. Now, again, if you want to see how I like the movie, watch my review. You'll be surprised. That being said, a third film was announced just before the release of Days of Future Past, titled X-Men Apocalypse, reportedly bringing back Bryan Singer to the director's chair and a screenwriting by Simon Kinberg, the producer of the series. The film was said to take place directly after Days of Future Past, and said to have the film directly attend with the antagonist, known as the very first movie known as The Apocalypse, played by Oscar Isaac of Star Wars: The Force Awakens. And not only was it going to be the third film in this franchise, but it also seemed like that there was a lot riding on his shoulders. When the film was released in theaters just this weekend, and after reading some reviews, I was appalled on how it would grade this movie, given that not only critics saying it was the worst rate. It is by far the worst rated film since X-Men: The Last Stand, which is kind of ironic, given that The Last Stand easily is lower than any X-Men film that could come out thus far, outside of X-Men Origins Wolverine. But potential fans and audiences were actually kind of mixed on the film, so I decided to have a look at the film for myself. What do we get? Well, guys, I'm gonna be honest here. I wanted to have a good opinion on this film, and I look into this film. I will be able to say something with this review, but I just don't have a lot to say, honestly, because not only am I lost for words since the beginning of my career doing this channel, but I didn't get very much out of this film. I'm not gonna say that this film does have its great moments, but it doesn't even reach the heights that Bryan Singer created when he brought back The Last Stand. That being said, like I said, there are some good pieces to this film, but overall, there's just not a lot that works here. I'm sorry. Okay, so first things first, let's start with the villain for this film. The villain for this film is said to be the reported X-Men villain, Apocalypse. Reportedly the first villain who was entombed several years in Egypt and was able to, it had the ability to, who, like the devil, can transfer his essence from one body to another, and would wave his hand to people to dust. However, and the premise of this film was that he becomes awakened in the 1970s after many years of sleeping. He awakens to find the film, to find the current world that the X-Men film is in, to be completely disgusted. He finds himself disgusted at this, and decides to destroy the world, and rebuild from the ground up with him as God. And he recruits mutants to become his horsemen, and the other mutants, such as Professor X and such, have to team up together to stop him once again. Now, this is one thing that critics and audiences were kind of worried about, because the cast, and the only thing they wouldn't be worried about is definitely the cast. Because, make no mistake, Professor X, played by James McAvoy, that guy's just magic, and there's always great interplay between him and Michael Fassbender, who plays Magneto. And although Magneto is a great character in this film, as well as a good anti-hero, you could say, I do kind of feel like he doesn't get much screen time. There was some awesome sequences with him, which I won't spoil, but I feel like that spoiling a long time doesn't give the characters a lot of room to breathe. And yeah, sure, there are a lot of build-ups that you can say add much to this film, but overall, there's just nothing that really got me as invested in the characters as I was in the previous film. As far as the writing goes, well, you do have your cliche writing. You do have your cliched, some of the writing cliches in there, like like in the trailer with Apocalypse going, "We will destroy this world and build a better one." And I gotta be honest, when I saw that I literally rolled my eyes. I mean, wow. I thought Boulevard, and I didn't even know who Boulevard Trask was, but I thought he was a better villain than this. As far as the cast for the mutants go, they actually are really good. Especially the younger versions of the cast. Like, obviously have a new Game of Thrones coming on there, like Jean Grey, like some Turner coming on as Jean Grey. She actually was really good. A lot of critics say that she's good. After seeing her, I can confirm that she's really good. She really is. And the rest of the main cast is actually good. Although to be honest, Jennifer Lawrence, she is still good, I will say, but she's really phoning it in when it comes to this. I'm really sorry. She is a great actress, but she's actually completely embodied this character, but she doesn't bring anything new or that emotional or compelling to this. So overall, this is the final appearance in the series. I can certainly say we're not going to be missing her in any future roles. Sorry. Talk about the final thing on this review, which is Bryan Singer's direction. Now, Bryan Singer has got a lot of mileage of directing some great action scenes and great moments in the X-Men franchise, and some of them are present here, especially the ending. In the ending, the ending part, however, is by far people has been saying is the most action-heavy since any other film in the X-Men franchise. Although I actually was really worried about that, given that Zack Snyder already tried this method of approach when he created Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. And if you go back to watch my review, you'll know how I feel about that. And although he steps things up just a little bit better, there's actually more stakes involved in this film rather than that film. I do have to say, however, that the special effects are actually seem a little bit too heavy, kind of analogous to what Zack Snyder did when I say he was stepping into Michael Bay territory. And I'm not saying they're bad. They actually do add a lot to the movie. Although I do wish that they weren't so scattershot as they were. Sorry. So in the end, yeah. Look, guys, I know I'm not really saying much when it comes to this film, but honestly, what more can I say? This is by far the 6th X-Men film in the entire franchise, and it's by far from the best. Like I said, in terms of, it's not better than Days of Future Past. It doesn't have the depth, the reliability, behind the characters to make you care about them. The action was subpar, and there wasn't much emotion behind it. Emotion there, but it's not a bad film. Although Apocalypse really turned kind of cliched in the end. Sorry. For me, I'm gonna give this film a very safe 6 out of 10, and I do recommend you guys see it if you want to see some effects-heavy action and otherwise pretty decent X-Men film. I honestly think that just like the Apocalypse trying to end the world, this movie might end the series. Might be the end of the world with critics as they know it. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. And remember, when the man's behind the camera, everyone listens. Even when that person is Marlon Brando. Until then, I'm Ross Butler. You're watching Game Man Weekly. I'll see you next time.